set up a meeting for tomorrow morning. Matt, how you doing, buddy? How are you? Good, mate. What's up? I'm all right. Makes it easier, right? Only got me about that. That's great.
I got a canoe and two
Yeah.
I got me some land in the barn.
Wall decoration. Leave one door open there, buddy. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. We'd like to get started now. If everybody can take their seats, we'd like to get started. Captain Sanchez. Good morning. My name is Brian Kellenberger. I'm the Director of Beach Operations for Walton County TDC. Appreciate everybody's attendance and participation today. This is our post-season beach vending meeting, where we talk about all things about beach vending, what was good, what was bad, and what we can do better collectively to make the beaches of Walton County a better place for all concerned. So before we get started, a few rules. If you can quiet your cell phones and tablets. If you need to take a call or make a text, if you can step outside, we'd appreciate. There may be a difference of opinion in the room tonight, so please respect everybody's questions and comments. And the meeting format is I'll have a brief presentation of some of the activity we experienced. Then we're going to open it up to questions and comments. I'll mediate, like we'll do it by recognition of hands. We have a microphone that we'll pass around. The microphone doesn't broadcast very loud in this room, but it does pick up the conversation because this is recorded, both video and audio. With that, a few introductions. Like I say, my name is Brian Kellenberger. This is Jeff McVeigh. He's our lead code enforcement officer. Josh Irvin, our beach maintenance manager. Harold Taunton, code enforcement officer, a.k.a. Junior. Captain Addie Rowell in the back with Walton County Sheriff's Office, Sammy Sanchez, and Colin with the South Walton Fire District. This is Stacy, our office manager, who makes things happen in our office. And John Callens, our beach ambassador in the back. So that's pretty much the people that you'll encounter on the beach with my department and with the Sheriff's Office and South Walton Fire District. So a few things from last year. We had approximately 3,500 contacts with beach code enforcement. Contact is where our code enforcement officers meet and greet people to take enforcement action on what could possibly be non-compliant behavior. Of that, about half of them were vendor related. Of that half, 10% received citations for non-compliant behavior. About 30% were in compliance, and the rest received a verbal or written warning. Of the items that we were mostly encountered or complaints throughout the year were ghost sets, early setups, and then storage at the toe of the dunes. Now, there's particular verbiage in the ordinance on how two of those items are addressed. Ghost sets is probably the one that has the least verbiage on it. It is kind of handled, or it really is handled within the delivery permitted vendor, and it is addressed with no active vending is allowed by the delivery permitted vendor. What that means is you can't just set up sets on the beach and expect somebody to come by, and rent them as a speculative set. Now, we understand the typical operations by a delivery vendor. Typically, it's a weekly rental. Sometimes they're seasonal, associated with a rental property. And you set them up at 7, and you break them down at 4 or 5 o'clock. And your rentee may have been there part of the day, or may have decided to go somewhere else that day, but you're obligated to set them up. So in previous meetings, I have made comment about separate regulation. And what I meant by that is that since in the absence of a specific definition of a ghost set or speculative set, we encourage you as beach vendor to try to minimize those sets. If your rentee is not going to be using them for the day, don't set them out. And like I've always stated in one-on-one meetings with vendor owners, or as officers encounter people, it's imperative that you as the vendor, where there is absence of a specific regulation, but you know that it's a problem that's affecting the beach, that you self-regulate. And so therefore you won't be regulated, what I say, off the beach, or regulated to a point where it impedes your business ability. And I noticed that through social media last week, after I made these comments in our previous meeting, that there was a lot of it taken out of context. I just want to clarify that in regards to ghost sets. Early setups, once again, South Walton Turtle Watch is people on the beach early in the morning, and we received a lot of complaints from them, as well as the general public, on early setups. In other words, not paying attention to the texting program. Some of the reasons we were explained to us is that we had new people, they didn't understand it. We saw the turtle person walk by, just a myriad of reasons. But in the end, it's on the vendor to make sure that they either wait for the turtle text and or the 7:30 a.m. time. If South Walton Turtle Watch hadn't completed their business by 7:30, then you can set up. I know the other complaint or part of that is, well, the general public gets down there before us and is not constrained by the turtle texting. They actually are constrained by the 7:30 a.m. time. However, as you know, Florida Statute 162, Section 2 requires that our code enforcement officers observe the violation in person in order to make a case and issue some sort of enforcement action. A lot of beach to cover with the amount of resources we have. The good news is that we'll have more resources next year. Our code enforcement team will go from Jeff and 4 officers to Jeff and 10 officers. So we'll have more enforcement on the beach. We're also increasing our beach ambassador crew from John Callens as 1 person to 2 additional full-time and 2 additional part-time who will be brought on from March 1st through October. And so we hope that we can better educate and keep the general public in compliance in regards to the 7:30 a.m. setup time, and therefore relieve some of the pressure to do early setups. Last one was really storage at the toe of the dunes. As we all know, there is verbiage in the beach vending section that says you're allowed to store your equipment at the toe of the dune, but it has a specific requirement that it is going to be rented the next day. Its original intent was for the delivery vendor who had brought equipment to a house or a piece of property. If that person was going to rent it the next day, then you could store it at the toe of the dune. Now, once again, with our weekly rental and or annual rental, then we've kind of, I wouldn't say exploited, but we've really pressed that intent to what it really is. So we really noticed it towards the end of the year when there's a lot of equipment on the beach stored that's not being used every day. If it's being used every day, it's in full compliance. If it's not being used every day, then it's hard for us to defend not taking appropriate action for that particular section. So once again, I encourage you that towards the end of the season, if your rentals are decreasing or whatever, let's go ahead and get our equipment off the beach. I know Labor Day is the big last hurrah for the year, but once again, it gets back to if vendors are responsible on the beach, then it decreases the complaints to our department and, of course, to the county commissioners, because every complaint that comes to me also goes to 5 commissioners, and then it comes to me from 5 commissioners with a request for explanation and what enforcement action was taken. So once again, as an industry, you can really help perpetuate your ability to do business by being good stewards of the beach as part of your industry. So with that being said, Jeff, do you have anything to add to comments? Okay. Now I'd like to open it up to the floor. Once again, this is questions or comments about beach vending. We have a meeting on the 21st that will encompass all beach-related activities, the good and the bad, and how we can do better. But today we'd like to limit it to beach vending issues. So if we got any? Yes, sir, Matt. That meeting starts at 5 o'clock. It's scheduled for 2 hours. It'll be in this room right here. And it is actually a BCC workshop, but we'll be sponsoring it and mediating. And it'll be very similar to this, except it'll be oriented to, like I say, all things beach-related that mainly our department, enforces. So it's all of Chapter 22, and of course the Section 5 of Land Development Code, Wildlife Lighting Ordinance. Any questions or comments? This is our time or your time to speak. Don't be afraid to talk. If you got any comments on how we do business, how you think y'all can do business, or if you're a member of the general public. Yes, sir. Also, if you'd state your name, I'd appreciate it for the record.
My name is Alex Menace from Sunny Sands Beach Service. My only question or maybe concern is that the vendors maybe don't have a voice we have a voice at the annual meeting, but in some of the permitting process. There's a couple blanks in the permit that you can tell maybe weren't written by somebody that ever worked beach vending before. For example, we needed a life-saving certificate. Didn't say what life-saving certificate, wasn't very specific, pretty vague. Calling the planning office, nobody knew. Just some things like that we don't have a voice in the specific decision-making process.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. 2 years ago, the language in that was even more vague than it is now, but we changed that in 2015 with Ordinance 2015-07. Captain Sanchez, can you speak to the language that was added into that? South Walton Fire District was instrumental in making the language for what life-saving certificate was required and who it actually applied to.
So I can remember this, it had been a couple years.
Yeah.
Keep your microphone recorded. Sandy Sanchez, South Walton Fire District. If I'm not mistaken, the issue was the way the language was written. It was hard to find one of those life-saving life saving certificate. We changed it to CPR requirements. Made it a little bit easier for veterans to obtain that, because life saving certificate was, quite honestly, when we looked at it, we're like, what is that? I think that language was put in years ago. Some of you that may be new vending, I think the language was put in years ago because there were so many beach vendors, we didn't have lifeguards. So we're trying to utilize what we had out there to help facilitate some of the life-saving measures. So that language was changed. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I believe that was taken out in lieu of CPR card.
Yep.
We had a vendor. Yes, that was the reason.
Right.
We had a vendor that was trying to create or started a job of, I think, hydrobiking.
Yep.
And she was getting hung up with that part, so they changed that language.
Let me add a little bit to that as well. So the language is made more specific. I will check with the permitting clerks to make sure that the application and the rules has that specific language. But the best way to look at it is go to Chapter 22, Section 2260, and in there you'll find that there's a section that pertains to regular vending, which is equipment on the beach, and then there's a section that pertains to water-based activities. And the language is fairly specific now. It might not be contained completely on the permit application, but part of the permit application is receipt and acknowledgement of the Chapter 22. Now, another thing that's going to change this year is there's going to be some changing to the permitting process. I have petitioned to allow my department to handle the actual permitting process. Since we have to review them anyway, all the beach vending permits and the special event permits, I've asked that be put under my office so that we can administrate it, since we have direct knowledge and experience of beach vending, and we're instrumental in making recommendations to revisions to the beach or Chapter 22 of our municipal code. So this year coming up, you'll probably see some changes that will make it easier for you as a vendor and be more specific in the wording of the ordinance or the municipal code. That's our goal, is to remove the ambiguity in the code, make it more definitive. Of course, the Board of County Commissioners has the final say-so on what is amended and how it's amended. Legal Department adds input to make sure that any revisions we recommend are legal in accordance with different Florida statutes and all that. So September 21st is another opportunity that you'll have to be included in the input. Today is a day. The preseason meetings that we have each year are also another avenue. And you can always contact me or Jeff via email or call us on the phone and write down your ideas or comments on what you think will make it better. What we do is we take all the input from this meeting we had last week, the meeting we'll have on the 21st. We put it together with our year-end analysis, which is our activity report and our complaint logs, and we come up with what we believe is the users of the beach ways that would make things better. So, yes, sir.
I'm glad you brought up the permitting process. My only other concern is the planning department's excuse for a lot of permitting has been, we're learning. It's new this year, we're learning. We received old vending applications. We were written down the wrong preseason time and date for the meeting. And then,
Okay.
So our insurance information, everything from the get-go was 2014. So I talked to Jeff about it, we spent about the entire month of March trying to get somebody in the planning office that knew what we were.
Okay.
What we were missing.
I believe they were having some transition in permitting clerks there, and so there may have been a educational time period, but we try to, we work with them very closely on all the beach vending permits, and so in the future, I don't anticipate you'll have any issues this one coming up. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to get started earlier. We'll have our preseason meeting the 1st of January. We'll immediately start permitting activity then. And so that, rolling around the 1st of February, everybody should have their permits in place and, ready for what we consider the first of the beach vending season, which is spring break. But you'll see a noticeable difference this year. The people they have in the permitting office, we now believe that they are, very well adept at what they're asked to do. Amy and Rosanna are the two people we deal with. Last year, I agree, Amy was new to it. Rosanna came in partway during the season. But you'll see a difference this year.
And is it moving to the TDC instead of the planning?
That's what I have petitioned the county commission for, and I expect to receive word back on that here shortly. And we've already started making moves and getting prepared to do that. So like I say, we anticipate if the change is approved, that starting January 1st, we, the Beach Operations Department, at our beach maintenance office on Blue Mountain Beach Road, Highway 83, will be the new place where you submit your applications. They have been perfecting the online application process, and so we believe we'll be able to move fully into that. But we're making preparations for all that right now. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Does that also include things like weddings and that sort of thing?
Well, what I've asked for is all, she needs a microphone, all items that are going to be taking place on the beach. So if it's a special event permit for the beach, some of those include weddings, some of them are just, family gatherings or whatever. I've asked for those to be, allow our department to handle the permitting process, because we can believe that we can stop some of the non-compliant behavior better at the permitting level. So now, special event permits for land-based activities, concerts, road races, events at houses in a neighborhood and all that would still be under the permitting department. So it's just beach-related activities. Okay? Let's don't miss the opportunity to talk. Like I say, if you got any questions, comments, now's the time. So, yes, ma'am.
Mayor Johnson, Member of Beach Service, would you guys, if you get to take over the permitting process, any of the requirements or fees changing, would you guys take it over?
Can't answer that question definitively. One of the items that has been brought up is the fee to do business on the beach. May need to be looked at, but those are things that will be brought up in TDC meeting on October 4th and the BCC meeting on more than likely the first or the second Tuesday in November, which I believe is the 11th. We'd like to take care of all of our BCC business in the South that affects the South. I could expect some consideration for a change in permit cost, but I can't answer that definitively. We'll have to see what happens on the 21st. 21st, once again, will be a meeting that's more geared towards general public. Even though this meeting is open to the general public, most of the people in the room are vendors. But I anticipate the meeting on the 21st will have more general public people in there. And some of the complaints that I've received personally via email or phone is why is the permit fee at the cost that it is? It ought to be more. So once again, we as beach code enforcement, beach operations, we make recommendations for consideration to the BCC, and the BCC makes the final decision on how they think the policy ought to be. Same thing for special event permits. Those are $50. We do anticipate that there will be heavy consideration for those permit fees to go up. Other than that, there'll be some other, specifics change to help remove some of the ambiguity in the ordinance. Within the beach vending ordinance or code, there's a lot of things that are left open to interpretation, like reasonable distance from the water's edge, access aisles for the public. It doesn't have definitive language in there for that. And so some of our recommendations will be that as we gather more input from these meetings and finish compiling all of our complaints, suggestions, comments, We'll put all that together, and it'll go out before the meeting. All the BCC agenda items are put out, I think they're out on the Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. So we'll make it available to everybody, and we'll also send it to everybody that's on the vendors list so that you'll have time to review and be at those meetings to offer your comments and or suggestions. And I'd appreciate if everybody be there. I mean, it's like voting. If you don't vote, you don't have the opportunity to complain later. So if you want to regulate, if you want to, affect your industry and how we do business on the beach, then you need to be at the meetings to make sure the county commission understands your point of view. That goes for general public as well. Okay? Ms. Bausch, did you have another comment?
I was going to ask about the first, do they or do they not count as vendors?
That is another area that we're going to address. The language has verbiage in it that if you're offering a goods or services for a fee on the beach, you're considered a vendor. And so right now we do have some people that operate really what we call services. They're not necessarily offering a goods for consumption on the beach, but we plan to that would be what we call an administrative change, where we can make sure we capture everybody that's doing business on the beach, that they are paying the proper permits and fees, and more importantly that we know about them and can help once again make the beaches better for all concerned.
The biggest problem with photographers is not really that, they're not doing harm typically, or causing any problems, except for the fact that it is not unusual for them to decide to put whole families worth of people in the dunes. And, there's a lot of us that work really hard to try to preserve the dunes around here.
Yes, ma'am.
And to all of a sudden have this whole influx of people that you've never even seen before, parading around in the dunes right in your front of your home or, nearby is a little frustrating.
Yes, ma'am.
So it'd be great if you all could impress on them that if they want to take pictures on the beach, that they might avoid the dunes.
Right. Well, that is one of the reasons why we would like to have the permitting application process in our office, is where I stated earlier that we feel like we can get the compliant behavior at the permitting application time instead of out on the beach, is through a frequently asked questions list that goes with your permit application, as well as a completely defined rules and regulations. So a wedding photographer comes in, they want to get a permit. First they get a permit to be a vendor on the beach, and then if at that time they would receive this information, and we could impart on them, hey, make sure you don't get into the dunes. Toe the dune is okay, in the dunes is not okay. So we feel like by being proactive at that level, we can hopefully stop some of this non-compliant behavior. The other part is that they will sign a affidavit that they have received this information and that they are going to comply by it. So therefore, if we do encounter them on the beach in a non-compliant behavior, it's a lot easier to issue a citation versus a verbal warning or a written warning. Yes, sir.
From what I understand,
Could give us your name.
Dylan Lund, Dylan Beach Services. From what I understand, Florida has taken back their walking on the dunes, where you used to not have to stay off the dunes, and now they're saying it's not a rule anymore. Is that something that we can, as Walton County, put a rule for general public, not only vendors, but general public, everybody to stay off the dunes?
We can. It's an ordinance change. You're correct, as in Walton County doesn't have a specific ordinance against walking on the dunes. At this point, it's really a what we call best management practice, a BMP. I don't know if FDEP has necessarily rescinded their rule and the Florida statute associated with it. I'll have to do some research on that, because that's the first I've heard that Florida has rescinded a statute. Jeff?
My understanding that's the case.
Okay. we'll do some research on that. I can't speak for the county commission, but to, pass an ordinance, blanket ordinance like that would probably, even though it's good on the face, you also have to think about the enforcement capability of doing it. And so, as you know, a lot of our property in South Walton is considered private property because they own title to either to the mean high water line, and if not, to the toe of the dune. And so most of that behavior takes place on what would be considered private property. And as code enforcement, we're charged with handling civil infractions associated with Chapter 22, and then Walton County Sheriff's Office is charged with handling criminal action associated with the Florida statute. And then, of course, FDEP has their own regulation and enforcement department, typically associated with construction, seaward of the CCCL, Coastal Conservation Construction Line. But let's do a little bit of research, and I appreciate you bringing that up to us. Any more comments? Sure, we got something else to say. I mean, now's our time, so, yes, sir.
In regards to what Dylan's talking about, regardless of private property or not, as far as the ordinance goes, you could still do that through an ordinance, but it wouldn't be anything different than junk and debris or whatever on private property. So
Right.
realistically, if the commissioners chose to do that, they could put the ordinance through, it would be an enforceable ordinance. I mean, just be handled a little bit
Right.
different than something handled that was on public property.
Captain?
Anybody has any bonfire questions or issues or concerns?
I want to commend you on your process for bonfires. I think you've done a spectacular job.
We tried. It's been a process in the making, and what we try to do is not only protect the property owner, we're also trying to preserve life, so we look out for those as much as possible. In reality, what we're trying to protect really is the whole bonfire industry in general, because I always tell folks, this is not, you're right, you're not born with it, this is a privilege, and most of these vendors have probably heard me say that 100 times before, it is a privilege, one of the few counties in the state of Florida that allows it. And if we continue to go this route, I don't see any issues with it, but if we start breaking the laws and doing it the way we want to do it, everybody does it on their own, it's going to go away. So it's really on you guys, not me. It's you guys that have to preserve it. So I want to thank you guys for doing a good job with it.
Question, Stan.
Yes, sir.
How many violations were issued this year?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer that to Jeff because we get, we do get, anytime we write citations, they let us know. But if I had to guess, I would say it's minimal.
You got the number in front of you?
I don't have it right in front of me, Dave. Last year, and I think we pretty much mirrored the same thing, it was less than 10% of the number of bonfires permits issued. So all in all, the bonfire industry is pretty good about following the rules of bonfires. We do check a lot of them, on average, 30 or 40 a month. And of that, about less than 10% are non-compliant.
What about cleanup process? Because speaking for myself, I get here on a daily basis, especially through, weekends when we go set up off-sites or something like that, there's always remnants of a bonfire.
Yes, sir.
There wasn't in the pit, or they left their pit right there in the beach, there.
I think a lot of those are not vendors. I could be wrong. A lot of those are not vendors, so that's where we have to do a better job of following up with that person, that private citizen. If you guys know, you can send me pictures, I need that information, because other than that, it's just hearsay. But I don't hesitate one bit, fine. Some of you have already been in my office, maybe once, say, just get my email, love you with emails if you want, I don't care, so.
How about the process of applying for a permit? I know that there were some big issues, but, you know, I know I applied for a permit one day at a watercolor public access center. Oh, no, it's already full. So what is that number? Is it 2, 3?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. We took it upon ourselves, prior district, to look at some of these accesses that were, I'll just go ahead and say, it, I think they were troubling for us because they weren't very wide. So, I'm just picking out here. Dylan will come and say, I want to get this bonfire for, access 30, okay? We know access 30, and I could be wrong, is not very wide. We know that if he sets up there, in reality, another vendor probably not gonna have room, because he's gonna end up spilling on private property. So we thought we would take it upon ourselves to limit some of these accesses. What we did take into account was the special event permits, which, as Brian alluded to earlier, we're working with the county with that. The special event permit, basically, you're having a wedding, a bar mitzvah, whatever, you pretty much have free reign the way it's written, that's the way we interpret it. There wasn't a lot of what you can and can't do with it, other than you can just set up wherever you want and do whatever you want. And that is being addressed, that's high priority. I think Matt sat in on that meeting as well. So we are working towards that. But we didn't take it into account. We didn't know anything about that, to be honest with you. That was our fault for not doing our homework. But what has happened now, I'm sorry, so to back up, well, what's happening is Dylan would set up, and then Susie Jones from Nashville would come in and do a wedding. And now you got Dylan and his bonfire party of 10, and Susie and their party of 40, and a beach access that in reality 10 is the limit. That's why we set limits on some of these beach access now. Once these vending, special event permit gets wrapped up a little bit, and we got a better idea of where they're at and what they're doing, we're still gonna have some limits on those beach access, but that's the reason why. It's to preserve not only the process, but also to keep you guys from having judgment on say you're on private property. And that's what we're trying to do. So I don't know that there is really a good way to do that other than this is the limit on some of these, just because of the way that the nature of these accesses.
Dave,
Can you change the process into as applying for that bonfire in a time period? Like say I have a bonfire in April 15th, can I apply for it in March?
I believe it's a 2 week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yes, sir. And again, we did that also because we thought, well, if we know company ABC Bonfire is a big company and they utilize Access 30 all the time, what's to stop them from coming in January and say, I want it every Saturday from, and that's not fair to you guys. So, I'm telling you, man, this was a struggle for us because we were trying to make it fair for everybody, and at the same time, we're trying to protect people's rights on the property. So,
Absolutely.
it's been a struggle.
I think you guys did a great job with it. It's relatively painless.
Dave, let me come to you on the cleanup of bonfires. One of the things that we run into is, one, the guys see the bonfire and they see the people, and it's a non-permitted bonfire, and when they get about 100 yards from them, you see people head up a boardwalk. So everybody leaves, the bonfire's burning on the beach, and then there's nobody there to address with it. So they've just walked in from a public access from somewhere, and when the guys get close to them, they haul tail. So then it's, who do you go to, where do you go, what do you do? So most of the time the guys wind up putting the bonfires out, and then at some point in time somebody gets by to try to get the most of it up. So the enforcement side of it on the non-approved bonfires are more difficult when people they've tore up sand fence and grabbed some pine straw out of the flower beds and they've just started a bonfire, and then when they see you coming they run. But then you get the people that just don't know that you got to have a permit. They got a container, they got a fire that's in a container, it's in an approved container, they just don't have a permit. So then it's people like that you can generally cite those people. But the hardest part about the stuff on the beach, and I've personally this past summer have checked bonfires and then come back through in an hour and a half or two, and I hate to tell my secret, but you can go to a bonfire that's been buried and its footprints everywhere except this little piece right here that's all nice and raked clean, about 4 foot around. And you can dig around right there and they bury their bonfire. And I've wrote vendors tickets for burying bonfires on the beach. So it's hard to be there in that hour window right after they bury it. But I mean, we try to go back and recheck bonfires that we've already checked, just because that's starting to become a trend there. They know you've already come by and left. Well, then when you leave, they just bury the bonfire. So
Anyway,
That's back on you guys, and that's your industry. My chief officer, that's your people. That's your industry, those are your folks. You gotta do some self-regulation. Again, these things are a privilege, and if we don't take care of it, it's gonna go away. And then, what are we gonna do?
yeah. Matt?
Matthew Harris, Household Bird Watch. I got a few things. First, what's the earliest you can issue, can someone apply for a bonfire permit, and how far out?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay, and then, is there a time limit when the bonfire has to end at night? Like, is there a certain amount of hours that it has to be over by?
The way the ordinance is written, and we never addressed the specific time, it's a 24-hour bonfire, or 24-hour time period. When we took over in 2010, basically, the way it was written, you come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and leave it on the beach at 3 o'clock the next day. So we changed the language and said you have to have it cleaned up at least by 8 o'clock in the morning. Most bonfires are off the beach by midnight at the latest.
Yeah. And the other question, we discussed it before, what steps do we have to take if, on the Turtle Watch side, we know there's a nest hatching within a matter of days, but there's also been bonfires issued right where these nests are. Does that mean?
If you let me know that there's a nest and it's gonna hatch anytime soon, we can not issue permits to that area.
Let me address that.
We're starting an issue though, like 2 weeks out, and then we know, because we know it.
They still have to maintain 200-foot distance from that nest.
Okay.
That was put in, the original ordinance read maybe 50 foot, 100 foot, and we pushed it back to another 100 foot, and then 200 foot. But again, we have to know that,
Yeah.
and you and I can talk offline, because
Yeah.
I still want to get an idea. I think we can work together with
Yeah.
GSI and find a way to map out these nests.
Yeah. Matt, let me address that. We are working with GIS already on coming up with a comprehensive map to identify where turtle nests are. One of the things that we discovered in our first go at this year is that some of the times the coordinates that are given to us are not correct. They're out in the Gulf. So what we would like to do is work closer with you, you personally with South Walton Turtle Watch, to make sure all of our nests are identified, proper coordinates. We put them on this map, becomes part of the permitting application process. So some of the things we've been talking about with us taking over beach-related permitting, like I say, South Walton Fire District will remain doing the bonfire permits because they do a good job at it, and we have a very good collaborative relationship with that process. But part of it will be identifying these nests, and once again, getting back to the permit application time to change non-compliant behavior is we'll let these people know that your event could be affected by a turtle nest that may appear within that geographical area. So GIS, great mapping capabilities, pinpoint the nest. They can put us a 200-foot circle on there, and then we can start, letting people know, sorry, this access is no longer available for bonfires because there is a turtle nest at this location that if we allowed you to do a bonfire, you'd be non-compliant with ordinance section 22, whatever the number is. So those are we're listening to the complaints that we're getting, and we're trying to change. And I appreciate everybody's understanding that, the ordinance does have certain limitations to it, mainly because they haven't been addressed. It's not because there's a lack of desire or a, propensity to cater to a certain group of people. It's just because the issue hadn't come up before, and we have to find a effective way to manage it. And so we feel like that by doing this with the mapping and the advance notice, as in all cases, if you're going to interrupt a person's event, they have to be noticed in advance, that, hey, Miss Wedding Planner, you're being issued a permit for this access, 6 months in advance. Please be advised that our beaches are turtle nesting habitat, and the ordinance reads that you can't set up within X amount of feet, and therefore your event may be compromised by a unknown future event of a turtle nest. And that would probably say to that person, if I was a wedding planner, I'd say, oh my gosh, if I try to do that, and then there's this factor that can prohibit me from doing it, maybe I need to find me a different venue. So I think that, by doing that, once again, by being proactive, informative, letting people know all the issues that could affect them, that we will slowly get our beaches into the harmonious state that we seek.
The other thing, I just wanted to thank all the vendors this year, man. Like, you guys are pretty cooperative overall. I had to talk to a few people, we did some minor issues, and then there was major issues, it was pretty understanding, worked out pretty quick. The main thing was just early setups, really. It was new guys came in, they didn't know. I just urge you guys to please get on the texting programs. I really do think it helps. I mean, there wasn't a time where you guys, I don't think ever this year you guys would get on the beach by 7:30. A lot of times it's 6:30. If we're running late, 6:45. And so we really do make a great effort to get up, get early, get on the beach, get the walk done quick, to let you guys get set up as early as possible. So that the people who had trouble getting on it or getting you guys on it, just I urge you guys, man, it really does help. And if that texting program goes away, it's just going to go back to 7:30, which doesn't really benefit anybody.
Right.
If anyone has any questions for me or anything they want to know or any issues they have, feel free to ask me.
Yeah. All this information is contained on various websites. If you want the specific instruction sheet, email me or Stacy. We'll send it right to you. Very easy program to get set up on. They have their own website. All the information is contained on that. So there's really no excuse for not being on the texting program if you're a vendor. And the other thing I want to stress is in past years we've had the issue with, I saw the turtle monitor go by. We don't go by turtle monitor going by. You go by texting program. We catalog it every day. We receive complaints from Turtle Watch as they, as it is presented to them, and then our guys follow up, with the vendor to let them know that, hey, non-compliant behavior, you got to correct your behavior. If we catch it, it's going to be a citation.
And I do want the vendors to know real quick, I get a lot of violations, almost all of them, and if it's minor, I get calls where it's just, hey man, there's a set out on the walkers, I can tell it's just a set that right out of your box, or someone left one set out. I'm not calling you code on every little thing, and oh, this vendor's horrible, there was one chair left on the beach. It's just if it's, repetitive every day, where it's blatant setups that are set right in front of the net, so it's not like we're calling every little thing, nitpicking everything every single day over vendors. I try to filter what I need, bother these guys with it, it's super minor.
Yeah.
So I just want you guys to know that.
Okay. Any more comments? Yes, sir.
One thing, for you, if you could the rest of this year, I know the seasonal season's not lasting that much longer, but, yeah, but, if you could, the nests that are by boardwalks, let Jeff know so they can so it makes my job easier, because when I get down there and I got, a citral nest is not made known to them, and having to be 200 foot, but there's a vendor zone, so I have to be within this, and so that makes it real hard for me to, because I've already taken these people's money, to go down there and try to stay in the rules of being 200 foot from that, citral nest, but I have to be in this zone, so y'all can let them know, so we won't even.
You talking about bonfires?
Talking about bonfire?
For bonfire?
Yeah. Like I say, we're going to address that with the GIS mapping system. And
Well, I'm just saying for the rest of this year.
Oh.
That help me out.
Yeah. This year, we should not get a single nest at this point. Every nest that's out there is out there. They're hatching. We're literally pretty much done. Some areas have stopped walking. Panama City, we're pretty much done. So it's really over. There's a few nests that we're just waiting on to hatch. So
yeah.
And another thing that I have with the bonfires, the wedding companies, we work real close with wedding companies
Right.
on the bonfire and stuff. And they'll go ahead and put their stuff up, and we'll be doing the bonfire for the wedding company, working with them. And then when we get there, they'll have their stuff and everything set up in the non-vendor zone type area.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, by me being a vendor and setting up bonfires, I gotta be in that vendor zone.
Right.
So that they're gonna, I'm not really concerned about them paying the fee or anything, but is there gonna be some type of requirement where they have to come to all the meetings that we have to come to?
Yes.
They're gonna let
Yeah,
them-
that was what I was alluding to earlier, where we're going to get everybody meets the definition of a vendor properly in the permitting process, which means they have to come to the meetings, they have to get permitted as a vendor so that they understand the rules and regulations. We're also going to address how special events happen on the beach. There's a few things right now that are, the practice is circumventing the intent of the special event permit, and it creates confusion, chaos, and undue liability on people that it shouldn't. And so we're going to try to get all that in so that everybody understands, and everybody's playing by the same rules.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
One last thing, when we get a bonfire permit or special events permit, it's made known to everybody that it doesn't reserve you to spot at that place. That general public, they're already down there with their families and stuff, you can't tell them to move.
Right.
Or if there's something else going on down there, you can't tell them to move.
Right.
And I've had that where we get down there and a wedding company will want to tell somebody else to move, or I see another bonfire company telling people they need to move, and that ain't right, because that
Yep.
just disturbs everything.
I agree with you, and
For all the jurisdictions.
yeah, I agree with you. We actually, it says that right now in the permit process and in the ordinance. We're going to make it clear, once again, by handling the permitting application process, there's going to be a, what I call a frequently asked questions or a rules and regulations sheets that has specific language. And one of those line items will be, this permit does not guarantee you a specific place on the beach. It is a permit that allows you to set up where available on that particular access within the vendor zone. So, good point. Those are all things that need to be addressed as what I call a specific definitive language in the code and the permit application process.
I was just gonna say, on the flip side of that, as vendors, you also need to know that.
Yeah.
It doesn't guarantee you a spot. So,
Right, right.
Yeah.
in all honesty, the most issue we had this year with bonfires was the non-permitted ones, and then vendors that hired, 17-year-old kid for the summer. And maybe there's a training process, maybe there isn't, but he's completely clueless. All he knows is he's got to take a barrel down there, set it up, and light it on fire, and then pick it up later. So I would ask you guys, as businessmen, run your business and then train your folks. If nothing else, help them identify where the turtle nest is. Call me, I'll send you a picture if you don't have one. That's probably the biggest thing is sometimes the people that you hire are not aware of the rules. So again, that's up to you
Yeah.
guys to help with that. And I think if you do some of that, we eliminate probably half of our issues. So that'd be helpful.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? All right. Yes, sir. All right.
Where are we on signage?
Signage, you mean the signage on the beach? Right now, the ordinance was revised, and it's now called Section 2255, and it says that signage, ropes, fence, et cetera, is prohibited on the beach at any time. All right? So, we are enforcing it as the code is written. We have, disposed of approximately 28 cases, either through, mainly through compliant behavior. We meet with the owner, property owner, and/or their representative. A lot of times it's a vendor. Explain the ordinance as it's written, how it came into existence, the slight lag period where it was rescinded and then put back in place. And usually, we have gained compliant behavior. There is two lawsuits out there that are challenging it. They'll be heard on Wednesday, or
Well, the Board of Commissioners will have an executive session on September 20th.
on September 20th. regarding that in lawsuits that have been filed against it. Right now, the ordinance is in existence and we're enforcing it as it's written. So we encourage you as a vendor, if asked by a property owner to do non-compliant behavior, you explain to them that you as representative are liable to receive a citation for that, and encourage them to find some other way to either change the ordinance or be in compliance with it, or if they're using it as a form of protest, that they would be better off doing that themselves.
Going forward with the language identifying the signage, the definition of signage, my understanding that this is all about the private property signs, chain members.
Mhm.
And then the ordinance itself now addresses all signage. And most of us know that there is some signage that we have on the beach that is useful. It's not be out there to be, blocking people's access or,
Mhm.
hurt feelings or anything like that, but it is actual information that the associations that we're contracted with to identify, certain areas like, this is a no tent beach, you can't have a tent on the beach, or, price signs, or, just any type of information that a condo wants to put out, with the exception of a private property.
Right. I would, the ordinance has some specifics to it that say on the beach. The beach is defined as from the toe of the dune or line of permanent vegetation to the water's edge. If your signage is up next to your kiosk, which is at the toe of the dune, we will consider that compliant behavior. Or if it's at the toe of the dune, that's also compliant. If it's out on the flat sandy portion of the beach, currently we have no other enforcement action except to notify you, request compliant behavior. In the event you don't comply, then you're issued a citation, which escalates, the $100 levels up to $500, and then possible administrative action to revoke permits and all that. So,
Going forward, when there was mention of how we line up our umbrellas in the morning, you might address those and we need access ways.
the verbiage that's contained within the ordinance is actually, as far as access aisles and all that, is included in the delivery permit section. A specific place permitted vendor is, we considered bound by the agreement they have with the property owner that they have a contract with.
Dave, since you asked the question, I want to elaborate on your sign conversation. You and I have had this conversation. We've had you let La Dolce Vita get away with it. So everybody understands, there was 2 vendors in the permitting process that actually had drawn on their site plans a sign at this end that said what our rates was, and a sign at this end but I don't remember how many La Dolce Vita had, but there was several of them. So there's 2 vendors that actually has on their site plan signs, which was approved in the permitting process prior to the ordinance. So I can't promise you, and we'll look for legal guidance next year on whether or not we're allowed to approve those or not. So if there's any questions, the ones that you all still have out are still out because they're drawn on the site plan. So, and of course you and I have.
We wanted to know the clarification, the definition of the signage. I mean, there's certain verbiage on there that is necessary to be on the beach, in the middle of the beach. That's the only way that it actually gets enforced and done. So those are the things that are useful tools to vendors and also useful information to the tourists, to the public. It's not a deterrent to say, get away from here, don't do this, don't do
Right.
that. That's all I was asking for, is maybe going forward, defining verbiage, maybe on signage or something like that, and allowing in certain areas, those signs to be put up on a daily basis and enforced.
Okay. Good points. We'll bring it up in discussions with legal, that as Sydney with our legal department has indicated, there's going to be some discussion amongst the BCC as to how to move forward with that particular section of the ordinance. Ms. Bausch.
When you mentioned, I think I heard you right, the number 28 infractions or violations, is that after the ordinance passed or
Yes, ma'am. The ordinance was adopted late June. We gave a compliance date of July 15th, that's then changed to July 19th, was it? Somewhere along there. Anyway, so we gave a period of time to cure. And in that period of time, we actually got about 45% compliance. People voluntarily removed their signs, ropes, posts, plastic chain off the beach. We also received 2 lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of it. And then after that, there was a period of time where the ordinance was rescinded based on the receipt of these lawsuits, and then that lasted about a week, and then it was unrescinded, and we were asked to enforce the ordinance, the code as it's written. And so there was a little bit of confusion in there. So we took upon ourselves as code enforcement, and in part with Florida statute, that we have to give notice. There has to be what's called give proper notice to the non-compliant behavior and an opportunity to cure. So depending on the magnitude of the offense, or posts or ropes or signs, that time period was either 30 minutes or as long as 48 hours. The other factor in that is a absentee owner, where they have the fence installed and they're no longer, they're somewhere else because their property is investment property or second home. We would take that into consideration. We had a few cases where we actually gave that person a week with the agreement that they were coming back to their property in that 7-day period and would remove it. So in that time period, we gained pretty good compliance. Overall, I think there was a little over 100 pieces of property that were non-compliant when the ordinance was, or the code was revised. And so after those two time periods, and then our efforts of encountering property owners, notifying them of the non-compliance behavior, voluntary compliance, we then had, after that, about 28 cases that, once again, were really a misunderstanding of how the ordinance, the code was revised, how it was rescinded and then unrescinded, and what really was the expected behavior. Of those 28 cases, most people agreed, okay, we'll take it down. So if you go out on the beach today, you'll notice that there is a very few, if any, signs on the beach. We still have some active cases. Junior left this morning early because he has a meeting with the property owner to discuss just that particular item. So.
Just out of curiosity, do you happen to know approximately how many of the 100 original situations were things like condos or resorts versus just individuals?
No, ma'am, I don't. The majority of this stuff was located on our section of beach along 30A. There was some down on Scenic Gulf Drive, but not quite so much. But no, I don't have a breakdown of what is resort property, HOA, controlled property versus single-family dwelling private property.
Vendor zones, are they going to be adjusted or looked at again for next season?
We will, because of the obvious conflict of the paragraph D8 and then the public beaches that are south of private property, it does create a problem with the vendor zones because they do move, and it makes it hard, to regulate and enforce. Once again, part of our recommendation or items to be considered will be paragraph D8. As we all know, paragraph D8 was inserted into the ordinance associated with a previous beach renourishment program, and so there's been a reluctance to remove that based on that previous promise. There is language already contained within Florida statute, Chapter 161, that deals with beach renourishment and the formation of the erosion control line and how it, in regards to littoral property rights, And I think that we can already, I think the Florida statute already has protective language in it. So, once again, it'll be up to the Board of County Commissioners to set that policy. We, as beach code enforcement, information we take in, the experience we have, we will, that item will more than likely be on our list of items to be considered. In the absence of it not being considered, vendor zones will once again be set at the first of the year. And they will be identical to what we have right now. As you know, they changed about 6 times this year by people exercising their ability under paragraph D8. And sometimes we can move them. Most times they have to be omitted because of the as they move down the beach, people learn of that ability under paragraph D8 to prohibit vending in front of their property. Yes, sir.
There's gonna be something where they can't change it during the middle of our season, because the thing with that is, it's not only in, being a problem for the vendor, it's a problem for the church too. When they go call 6 months ahead of time to get on my reservation list, and then we go to take them to a certain location where they say the vendor's on in, all of a sudden we learn that it's moved, so we gotta tell the guests they gotta move on down the beach.
Yes, sir.
That's
There is no way for us to do that. Like I say, the ordinance or the code is very specific in that language, that to vend on public beach that is seaward and contiguous to private property, you have to have the upland properties written authorization. That authorization can come or go at any time, because it, like I say, that paragraph gives that upland property owner the ability to say yay or nay, and when they say yay or nay. So unfortunately, and that's the conflict that I talk about, is it creates conflict with the vendor's ability to do business on the beach, the person that relies on the vendor to provide chairs, and it just has a hard time existing together, vending on public beach that's seaward of private property, if that private property owner has the ability to say yay or nay.
I'm just looking out for the church, because,
I understand.
my guys get paid by the hour, so they'll do,
Like I said, yeah.
But it's just to try to keep the guests happy and keep them coming back
Yeah,
here.
I understand. Like I say, it's if there had not been that previous promise when that section was inserted into the ordinance, it might be easier to remove it now. But it was put in there for a specific reason, and the county commission has made it clear why they are reluctant to remove it now. And it's a understandable reluctance. If you as a body had made a previous commitment, then it's hard to rescind that, So we'll see how it goes. Once again, county commission is, works for the people of the county, and they listen to the people of the county, and that's why it's important to make your attitudes known to them via email. It's better to come to a meeting and take your opportunity to come to the podium and give a short narrative of how you feel and why you feel that way, and request consideration for your feelings. Any more?
Following what Brian said, if you followed some of these meetings where the vendors that came for public comment, just the general public has come for public comment. With the commissioners meeting, they start with a topic, but they don't ever really get their point across. So think about it between now and then. Make you some notes and some highlights and things you want to talk about. Whatever, you get 3 minutes to talk. So jot down your notes. Come up here and be specific with what you want, so they understand and you don't leave any doubt in their mind what your intent is. So ahead of time, plan your conversation, know what you want to talk about, be specific. That way there's no, well, I didn't really understand what he said, so I'm going to vote this way. So just take that advice from somebody that's been there having to come up with stuff to say. So
This is the way I explain it. Come with your problem, have a viable solution to that problem, remove as much emotion out of it as you can, and ask for consideration and not a mandate. And that gets the most traction by the Board of County Commissioners. They truly do listen to everybody. But if you've been to a meeting, you know, some people get very emotional, and their solution may not be the most viable solution for that issue, and it may not be fair and equitable to all concerned. And that's the other thing that is, you know, the deepest consideration, is it fair and equitable to all concerned, not to one particular group, industry, or, you know, area. Okay, appreciate everybody's time today. My cards are up here if you want to send me an email. I also encourage you to send it to Stacy. Her email is the same as mine, except it's Stacy at Visit South Walton. October 4th is the TDC meeting, where revisions to ordinance will be floated the first time, and then after that it'll go to the BCC, more than likely on the second Tuesday in October. So be aware of those, show up, and participate. The October 4th meeting will be at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's our bi-monthly Tourist Development Council meeting. TDC is an advisory board to the Board of County Commissioners. And then the BC meetings are second Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m. Yeah, man. Yeah, Chip. Appreciate it, buddy.